Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between the 4 challenge decks from 2020. We have Cavalcade Charge, Flash of Ferocity, Final Adventure, and Allied Fires here, and we're going to be playing a regular game of multiplayer free-for-all Magic here. And so the last deck standing is going to be the winner. We're going to roll off to see who goes first. Cavalcade Charge rolls 11. Flash of Ferocity rolls 7. Final Adventure rolls 8. And Allied Fires rolls 6. Cavalcade Charge will be going first, and each deck will draw their opening hand. Cavalcade Charge draws a Mountain, Torban, Thane of Redfell, Bone Crusher Giant, Rimrock Knight, and Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. I think this is a little bit slower of a hand than we hoped for, but I think it's keepable on the Rimrock Knight and the Bone Crusher Giants, being able to keep us alive until we can draw the lands to play out everything else. So we will do so. Flash of Ferocity draws a Forest, an Opt, Brineborn Cutthroat, Island, Nightpack Amateur, Quench, and Quench. It's not a great hand because we are a little short on lands here, but because we have the Brineborn Cutthroat and spells that we can cast on the opposite turn, we do have some sort of defense here, and so between the Quenches and the Brineborn Cutthroat and the Opt, we're going to keep this hand. Final Adventure draws a Foulmire Knight, Temple of Malady, Forest, Knight of the Ebon Legion, Swamp, Lucky Clover, and Murderous Rider. I think that this is a fairly decent opening hand. We have 1-drop into 2-drop, and then some ways of getting advantage off the Lucky Clover and the Foulmire Knight and the Murderous Rider, so I think that this is a keeper. Allied Fires draws a Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Triumph, Island, Drawn from Dreams, Fires of Invention, and Interplanar Beacon. I think that this hand doesn't really have enough defense for this deck, and so we're going to use our free mulligan, because it's multiplayer, and turn this in to get 7 new cards. Allied Fires draws a Deafening Clarion, Fae of Wishes, Vanishing Light, Fae of Wishes, Interplanar Beacon, Time Wipe, and Kazmina, Enigmatic Mentor. This would be a good hand, except that we don't have the lands to cast anything, and this deck really needs that, and so we're going to send this back and hope to draw better at 6. Allied Fires draws a Temple of Epiphany, Vanishing Light, Interplanar Beacon, Swiftwater Cliffs, Interplanar Beacon, Deafening Clarion, and Kazmina, Enigmatic Mentor. I think we can actually keep this particular hand because we actually have some defense and we can actually cast our spells. So we're going to take our Interplanar Beacon and put this on the bottom of our deck. Because this is multiplayer, we will be drawing on the first turn. So Cavalcade Charge draws a Cavalcade of Calamity, which is actually quite good. We'll go ahead and play a Mountain, and then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. Flash of Ferocity draws an Island. We'll go ahead and play the Island, and then Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. Final Adventure draws a Jungle Hollow, and then they will play a Swamp. We'll tap the Swamp and go ahead and get started by casting a Knight of the Ebon Legion. This is a 1/2 Vampire Knight, and for 2 and a black, it gets +3/+3 and Death Touch till end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion. Allied Fires draws a Fires of Invention, and then we will go ahead and play the Swiftwater Cliffs. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and then you can tap it for blue and red. And enter the battlefield tapped, we'll gain 1 life to go up to 21. And then Allied Fires will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge draws, gets a Mountain. We'll play the Mountain. We'll tap 2 mana, and then we will play the Rimrock Knight. This is a 3/1 Dwarf Knight with the Adventure half, which is Boulder Rush. Instant Adventure. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. But the general text for the Rimrock Knight is that it can't block. And then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. Flash of Ferocity draws, gets a Brineborn Cutthroat. We'll play the Forest, and then we will tap 2 mana and cast the Brineborn Cutthroat. This is a 2/1 Merfolk Pirate with Flash, and whenever you cast a spell during your opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Brineborn Cutthroat, and then Flash Ferocity will pass the turn. Final Adventure untaps, draws, gets a Swamp. We will play a Forest, and then we'll tap both of them to play the Lucky Clover. This is an artifact, and whenever you cast an adventure, instant, or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy, and then we will go to combat, and we will attack Allied Fires with the Knight of Ebon Legion for 1. Allied Fires takes 1 and goes to 20. Then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Allied Fires untaps, draws, gets a Tranquil Cove. Allied Fires will then play the Temple of Epiphany. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. And you can tap it for blue or red. We are going to scry, and we see a Fires of Invention. We already have one in hand, and so we'll put this on the bottom. And then Allied Fires will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps. Draws a Torban Thane of Redfell. We'll play a mountain here. And then we'll go to combat, and we will attack Allied Fires with the Rimrock Knight for 3. Allied Fires takes 3 and goes to 17. And then Cavalcade will hold up the Bone Crusher Giants and will pass the turn. Flash untaps. Draws a forest. We'll play an island. And then Flash of Ferocity will tap 2 and will cast another Brineborn Cutthroat. And then Flash of Ferocity will attack Allied Fires with the Brineborn Cutthroat for 2. Allied Fires takes 2 and goes to 15. And then Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. Final Adventure untaps. Draws a Smitten Swordmaster. Final Adventure will play a Swamp. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Allied Fires untaps. Draws, gets an island. Allied Fires needs to be able to cast a Deafening Clarion. So we made a mistake. We should have played the Tranquil Cove last turn, but we'll play that now. It is a land. It enters the battlefield tap. When it enters the battlefield, gain 1 life, and you can tap it for white and blue. Enter the battlefield tap, gain a life to go up to 16. And then Allied Fires will pass the turn. At the end of Allied Fires' turn, Cavalcade Charge will tap 2 mountains and cast the Stomp portion of Bone Crusher Giant. This is an instant adventure. Damage can't be prevented this turn, and it deals 2 damage to any target. And that will target one of the Brineborn Cutthroats. And then Bone Crusher Giant will be exiled. Flash of Ferocity will let that go. The Brineborn Cutthroat will die. And then Allied Fires' turn will end, and Cavalcade Charge will untap. They draw a mountain. We'll play the mountain, and then Cavalcade Charge will tap 4 mana and cast Torbran, Thane of Redfell. This is a 2/4 legendary dwarf noble, and if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. And then we will go to combat, and we will attack the Flash of Ferocity with the Rimrock Knight for 5 damage. Flash of Ferocity will take 5 and go to 15. And then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade Charge's turn, Flash of Ferocity will tap the blue and cast Opt. This is an instant, says scry 1 and then draw a card. And that will trigger the Brineborn Cutthroat. It'll get a +1/+1 counter, making it a 3/2. We'll scry, and we see an Opt at the top, and we will leave it on top and then draw it. And then we'll untap. We'll draw, and we'll draw another Opt. And then we'll play a forest, and we're going to hold everything for now because we have a lot of good options and we would like to keep them open. And so Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. At the end of Flash of Ferocity's turn, Final Adventure will tap 3, and we will cast Valmire Knight's Adventure, which is Profane Insight. It's an instant adventure. You draw a card and lose 1 life. And because we have the Lucky Clover, it is being doubled, and so we'll draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. We'll draw a Swamp and a Forest. We'll lose 2 life to go down to 18. And then we'll untap. We'll draw. We get an Order of Midnight. And then we will play a Forest. And I think we're going to stay defensive here. We can pump up the Knight, or we can cast Murderous Rider to kill threats, and so we'll just hold here and we will pass the turn. Allied Fires untaps, draws, gets a Time Wipe. We will play the island, and then I think we want to get Fires of Invention going, so we'll tap out and cast Fires of Invention. This is an enchantment. You can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs. It goes on the stack. Flash of Ferocity will tap 2 mana and cast Quench, targeting the Fires of Invention. It is an instant. It says counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. This will trigger the Brineborn Cutthroat and it'll get a counter. The Fires of Invention is countered, and Allied Fires is done for the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps, draws an Embercleave, and then Cavalcade Charge will go to combat and attack Allied Fires with the Rimrock Knight for 5. Allied Fires has no defense, will take 5 and will go to 11. Then Cavalcade Charge will spend 2 mana and will cast the Cavalcade of Calamity. This is an enchantment. It says whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. And then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade Charge's turn, Flash of Ferocity will tap the island and cast the Opt. This will trigger the Brineborn Cutthroat, and it will get another counter. While that triggers on the stack, Cavalcade Charge will tap 2 mountains, and will cast the Bone Crusher Giant, targeting the other Brineborn Cutthroat. The Brineborn Cutthroat perishes. The counter has nowhere to go, so it also fails. And then the Opt will resolve, and Flash of Ferocity will look at Thornwood Falls, and will stick that on the bottom. And then we'll go to Flash of Ferocity's turn. Flash untaps, draws, gets an island, will play the island, and Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. At the end of Flash of Ferocity's turn, Final Adventure will tap 2 swamps and a forest, and will cast Murderous Rider's Swift End ability, which says destroy target creature or planeswalker, you lose 2 life. And because of the Lucky Charm, that will be doubled. We'll be double targeting the 2 creatures that Cavalcade Charge has. We'll lose 4 life and go down to 14. Cavalcade Charge loses the Rimrock Knight and Torbrand. Then Final Adventure will untap. They draw a Lovestruck Beast. Final Adventure will play the Temple of Malady. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters scry 1, you can tap for black or green. We take a look at the Disfigure, and we will keep that right on top. And then we'll tap 1 mana to cast Heart's Desire. This is a sorcery adventure. You can create a 1/1 white human creature token. This exiles. We get a human. And then we'll tap 3 more mana. And we'll cast Lovestruck Beast. This is a 5/5 Beast Noble with Heart's Desire. With Lovestruck Beast, can't attack unless you control a 1/1 creature, which we do. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Allied Fires and taps. Draws, gets a Narset, Parter of Veils. Allied Fire will play an Interplanar Beacon. This is a land. It says whenever you cast a Planeswalker spell, you gain 1 life. You can tap it for colorless, and you can pay 1 and tap it to add 2 mana of different colors. Spend this mana only to cast Planeswalker spells. With 5 mana open, we are going to try to keep ourselves from dying. So we will tap this for red, this for white, and this for blue. And then we will cast Deafening Clarion. This is a sorcery. It says choose 1 or both. It deals 3 damage to each creature, and creatures you control gain lifelink at the end of turn. We'll go ahead and choose both modes, even though only the first one matters. Each creature will take 3 damage now. This will destroy the human, as well as Knight of the Ebon Legion. And then Allied Fires will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps, draws a mountain, will play the mountain. Cavalcade Charge will tap 3 mana and cast the Bone Crusher Giant from exile. This is a 4/3 giant, and whenever it becomes the target of a spell, it deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. And then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade's turn, Flash will tap 4 mana and will cast the Nightpack Ambusher. This is a 4/4 wolf with flash. Other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't cast a spell this turn, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. And then we will also tap 1 mana and cast the last Opt. We'll scry 1, we'll take the Sinister Sabotage, and we will keep it and draw it. And then we will untap. We draw a Castle Vantress, and we will go ahead and play the Castle Vantress. It says it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island. We do, and you can tap it to add a blue, or you pay 2 blue and tap it to scry 2. Go ahead and stay on the defense here. And because we didn't cast a spell this turn, we're going to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. And that becomes a 3/3 because of the Nightpack Ambusher. And then Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. Final Adventure untaps. They draw a Disfigure. Final Adventure will play the Jungle Hollow. It is a land. It says it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. We will gain 1 life to go back up to 15. We'll spend 3 mana to cast the Murderous Rider from exile. This is a 2/3 zombie knight with lifelink, and when it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. We'll also spend one more black mana to cast the Foulmire Knight from exile. This is a zombie knight with Death Touch. And then Final Adventure has some defense, so we'll go on the attack and attack allied fires in retribution with the Lovestruck Beast. Vulnerable as they are, they can't do anything about this, and they'll take 5 and go down to 6. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Allied fires and taps. They draw a Tranquil Cove. We'll go ahead and play the Tranquil Cove. It enters the tap and will gain another life to go up to 7. And then again, we are in a pretty bad situation here, and all we have is the Time Whites. But we can't even cast the Time White because we don't have 2 white open, and so I think we're going to have to try to survive with Kasmina. And so we'll tap 4 of our lands, the Interplanetary Beacon for colorless, the Island, the Temple of Epiphany, and the Swiftwater Cliffs to cast Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor. This is a 5 loyalty legendary Kasmina Planeswalker, and spells your opponent's cast a target creature or planeswalker you control. Costs 2 more to cast. For -2, you can create a 2/2 blue wizard creature token, then draw a card and then discard a card. So we'll go ahead and -2 immediately to take her down to 3. We'll create a wizard creature token, and then we will draw and discard. Allied Fires draws a Fae of Wishes, and we will discard the Banishing Light, as 1/1s are not terribly good here. And then Allied Fires will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps. They draw a Runaway Steamkin. Cavalcade Charge will spend 2 mana to cast the Runaway Steamkin. This is a 1/1 elemental. Whenever you cast a red spell, if Runaway Steamkin has fewer than 3 +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on it, remove 3 +1/+1 counters from it, and add 3 red mana. Then we'll spend 3 more mana, and we'll cast the Bone Crusher Giant from exile. That will put a counter on the Runaway Steamkin. In response to the Bone Crusher spell, Flash of Ferocity will spend 2 mana and cast Quench, targeting the Bonecaster Giant. The Bonecaster Giant is countered. And then with no good defenses, Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. Flash of Ferocity will untap. They'll draw, they get a forest. Flash of Ferocity will play the forest, and Flash of Ferocity will pass the turn. That'll get them another wolf. Final Adventure untaps. They draw a forest, will play a swamp. Final Adventure will attack Allied Fires with the Lovestruck Beast and the Murderous Rider. Allied Fires will block the Lovestruck Beast with the Wizard and take 2 from the Murderous Rider to go to 5. The Wizard dies. Then Final Adventure will spend 2 mana and cast Order of Midnight, which is a 2/2 human knight with flying and it can't block. And then Final Adventure will tap 1 mana and cast Curry Favor. This is Sorcery Adventure. You gain X life, and each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of knights you control. We control 3 knights, and because of the Lucky Clover, this will trigger twice, and so they will be able to drain twice, so they'll actually gain 6, and each other player will lose 6. This will take Final Adventure up to 21. This will eliminate Allied Fires. This takes Cavalcade Charge down to 16. This will take Flash of Ferocity down to 9. And then we will spend 2 mana, tapping the Jungle Hollow for black to cast the Smitten Swordmaster. It is a 2/1 human knight with lifelink. And Final Adventure will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps. Draws, gets a Fervent Champion. Cavalcade Charge will spend 4 mana and cast Torbrand, Thane of Redfell. This will put a counter on the Runaway Steamkin. In response, Flash of Ferocity will tap 3 mana and cast Sinister Sabotage, targeting Torbrand. This is an instant. It says counter target spell and Surveil 1. We'll Surveil. We take a look at the Spectral Sailor and we'll put it in the graveyard. Torbrand is countered. And Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. Flash of Ferocity untaps. Draws, gets a Quench. Flash of Ferocity will then pass the turn, getting another 3/3 wolf. Final Adventure untaps. Draws, gets a forest. Final Adventure will play the forest, and then Final Adventure will attack Flash of Ferocity with the Order of Midnight. Flash can't block and will go down to 7. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Cavalcade untaps. Draws, gets a mountain. Cavalcade will play the mountain. Cavalcade of Calamity will tap 3 mana and cast Chandra, Acolyte of Flame. This is a 4 loyalty legendary Chandra Planeswalker. For 0, you can put a loyalty counter on each red Planeswalker you control. For 0, you can create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. They gain haste, sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. For -2, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard. If the card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. We will immediately 0 it to get a loyalty counter, and then we'll tap 1 more mana to cast the Fervent Champion. This is a 1/1 human knight with first strike and haste. When it attacks another target attacking knight you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and equip the ability that you activate. The target Fervent Champion costs 3 less to activate. But we will be staying on defense because we can't really punch through what my opponents are doing. However, this will get 1 more counter to go up to 3, and then Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade Charge's turn, Flash of Ferocity will tap the Castle of Vantress and tap 4 mana to scry 2. We'll take the Nightpack Ambushur, leave it on top, and put the Thornwood Falls on the bottom. And we'll untap. We'll draw the Nightpack Ambushur, and then we'll pass the turn, getting another Wolf creature token. Final Adventure untaps, draws. It's a swamp. Final Adventure will play the swamp. And Final Adventure will attack Flash of Ferocity with the Order of Midnight. Flash of Ferocity can't do anything about that. We'll take another 2 and go down to 5. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps. Draws, gets a Castle Embereth. Cavalcade Charge will play the Castle Embereth. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain. You can tap to add red or pay 1 red, and creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. We will use the ability to give Chandra another counter, and then we will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade's turn, Flash of Ferocity will tap 4 mana and cast another Nightpack Ambushur, making everything a 4/4 with the tokens, and the other Nightpack Ambushur a 5/5. Then we'll untap. Draw. We get an Opt, and then we will pass the turn. We will get 2 more Wolf creature tokens, so we'll use these to represent the extra tokens. Final Adventure untaps. Draws a Lovestruck Beast. We'll pay 1 mana to cast the Heart's Desire, getting another 1/1 human creature token, and then we'll spend 3 more mana to cast the next Lovestruck Beast. And then we'll swing at Flash of Ferocity with the Order of Midnight to make it soft enough for Cavalcade to defeat. Flash will tap the island and cast the Opt. They'll scry, they'll see the Nightpack Ambushur and put that in their hand. They'll still have to take 2 and go to 3. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge draws, gets a mountain. We will use the 0 ability of Chandra to create 2 elementals. And then we will attack Flash of Ferocity with the 2 elementals. They will deal 1 damage each to Flash because of the Cavalcade of Calamity. Flash of Ferocity takes 2 to go to 1, and we will block the 2 elementals with the wolves. The elementals die, and then Cavalcade will pass the turn. At the end of Cavalcade's turn, Flash of Ferocity will spend 4 more mana and cast another Nightpack Ambushur, and then Flash of Ferocity untaps. We'll draw, we get a Quench, and then we will go to combat. It seems unlikely we can survive if either of these opponents live. The wolves are each 5/5s, and the Nightpack Ambushurs are each 6/6s. So we're going to go out trying to do as much damage as we can. We will attack Final Adventure with all 4 wolves, and we will attack Cavalcade of Calamity with the 3 Nightpack Ambushurs. Final Adventure will chomp 1 of the wolves with the human. We'll trade 1 of the Falmar Knights for a wolf, and we'll chomp the other one with the Smith and Swordmaster. We'll let 1 through, so we'll take 6, but we will also gain back 2 from the lifelink, so we're really just taking 4 to go down to 16. The Falmar Knight and the human will die. Cavalcade Charge will chomp 1 of the Night Pack Ambushes with the Fervent Champion. We will block another one with the Bone Crusher Giant, and we'll let the last one through for 6 damage. But we have a plan here. We're going to spend 6 mana to flash in Embercleave. This is a legendary equipment with flash. It costs 1 less for each attack creature you control. And when it enters the battlefield, attach it to a target creature you control, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample, making this a 6/6 double striker. This will actually kill its Night Pack Ambusher first. So this Night Pack Ambusher dies, reducing the power of everything across the board by 1. And then one of the Night Pack Ambushers will eat the Fervent Champion. Final Adventure will take 4 damage, but +2 because of the Smitten Swordmaster, so they'll actually just go down to 18 to 17. Smitten Swordmaster will die. The Chumped Fervent Champion will die. And Cavalcade Charge will take 5 and go down to 9. Then Flash of Ferocity basically gives up here and will pass. Final Adventure untaps, draws a Smitten Swordmaster. Final Adventure will cast Curry Favor. That will drain everybody for 4 because of the Lucky Clover, taking Final Adventure back up to 21. Cavalcade will take 4 and go down to 5. And Flash of Ferocity will perish. We completely forgot about the other 2 wolves that Flash of Ferocity had. I'm not sure that that would have made too much of a difference. Let's say that we sent them at Final Adventure, so that would be another total 6 damage going to Final Adventure. That takes Final Adventure back down to 15. Then Final Adventure will go to combat, and we will attack Cavalcade Charge with the Order of Midnight for 2. Cavalcade Charge will take 2 and go to 3. We'll spend 2 more mana to cast the Smitten Swordmaster from exile. And then Final Adventure will pass the turn. Cavalcade Charge untaps, draws a Scorch Spitter. Cavalcade Charge will lose in a few turns if we don't overwhelm Final Adventure here. So we're going to try to put the pressure on Final Adventure. We will 0 the Chandra to get 2 more elementals. And then we'll go to combat attacking with the Bone Crusher Giant and the 2 elementals, which is lethal. We'll also attack with the Runaway Steamkin, and this will trigger the Cavalcade of Calamity, so Final Adventure will take 2 more damage. Final Adventure go down to 13. The double striking Bone Crusher Giant is already doing 12 trample damage and can be pumped to do 14 trample damage. We need to survive this counterattack, so we need to soak up some of that damage. The Smitten Swordmaster will help reduce that damage. We'll put a Lovestruck Beast on there. So that is 6 of 14. That will survive. We'll block the Steamkin with the Lovestruck Beast, and we'll gain 2 life back from the Smitten Swordmaster, and we'll block one of the elementals with the Murderous Rider. Cavalcade Charge will use the Castle Embereth's ability to give everything +1/+1. The Elemental and the Runaway Steamkin will both die. The Bone Crusher Giant will first strike into these 2, and we will still take 1 damage from the first strike impact. We'll take 2 damage from the Elemental to go down to 10, and then another 7 from the remaining Bone Crusher damage going down to 3. And Final Adventure survives this onslaught. And then Cavalcade will spend 1 mana to cast a Scorch Spitter. This is a 1/1 elemental lizard, and when it attacks, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. And Cavalcade Charge will pass the turn. At the end of the turn, Final Adventure will tap a swamp and cast Disfigure, targeting the Scorch Spitter. This is an instant. It says target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. The elemental is sacrificed, and the Scorch Spitter dies. Final Adventure untaps, draws a Fabled Passage, but we'll just go in for the win, attacking with the Murderous Rider and the Order of Midnight. Cavalcade Charge cannot block. We will take 4 damage and perish. And the win will go to Final Adventure. Let me know what your thoughts were about this game in the comments below. If you saw any major misplays or misinterpretations of rules, also let me know so that I can learn from your wisdom. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.